William Willoya is an Inupiaq Eskimo elder from Nome, Alaska, whose life has spanned many roles beyond the fame of the 1962 book Warriors of the Rainbow. He grew up in Nome on the shores of the Bering Sea, living a traditional subsistence lifestyle, hunting seals and fishing from a young age. This Arctic upbringing made him physically strong and resilient. He was raised in a small native community, also spending time in the Yukon River village of Holy Cross, and attended local mission schools through the early 1950s, during the era of boarding schools for Alaska Natives. After his youth, Willoya led a life of extremes, taking on multiple careers while retaining his traditional heritage. He served as a soldier in the U.S. Armed Forces and later became a businessman in Alaska. Alongside these modern roles, he remained a traditional medicine man and sacred dancer. In Inupiaq society, he performed healing chants and dances for the sick and dying, a role he described as a medic chanting for the dying. In this way he bridged two worlds. For example, he worked in commercial fishing and fish processing while also leading tribal ceremonies. He has often been described in his community as humble and service-oriented. Friends note that despite his tough exterior, he remained quiet and unassuming, focusing on helping others rather than seeking praise. Even today elders recall Willoya as a teacher, someone who could teach the old Inuit ways, using chant and dance, while also engaging with outside religions and ideas. In the 1960s and 1970s Willoya traveled extensively among indigenous communities. He visited dozens of native tribes across Alaska and the Pacific Northwest to listen and learn from other elders. These trips gathered myths, dreams, and spiritual teachings from many peoples. In 1962 he co-authored Warriors of the Rainbow with publisher Vinson Brown, but Willoya's own purpose was broader. He was seeking common ground among peoples. Over time his outlook became pan-spiritual. He blended his Inuit shamanic beliefs with Christian and Bahá'í ideas, linking native prophecy with the Bahá'í faith. His personal spiritual discovery led him to speak of a great spirit and the importance of serving others. He emphasizes love, humility, and faith, traits he believes are shared across cultures. In interviews he often spoke of a vision in which all peoples come together in peace, reflecting both his Eskimo heritage and his adopted global faith perspectives. While the Warriors of the Rainbow book made headlines, Willoya's living legacy is how his story touched environmental and social movements. Greenpeace co-founder Bob Hunter carried a version of the Rainbow Warrior's prophecy on early voyages, and the first Greenpeace ship was named Rainbow Warrior after those teachings. In this way Willoya's voice reached far beyond Alaska, symbolizing a bridge between modern environmentalism and native wisdom. Willoya himself traveled overseas to honor this connection. In 2013 he visited New Zealand with former Greenpeace activist Susie Newborn. There he took part in Waitangi Day ceremonies and placed commemorative objects at Matauri Bay, the site where the original Rainbow Warrior ship was sunk in 1987. This pilgrimage, and the documentary Eighth Color that followed him, highlighted his message of unity and brotherhood across races and faiths. Willoya is remembered as a cultural bridge. In Alaska he is seen as a keeper of Inuit tradition. Globally he is a symbol of cross-cultural understanding. Through storytelling, interviews, and film, he emphasizes courage, compassion, and service to the Great Spirit. Even though the Rainbow Warriors legend is widely associated with a mid-century publication, Willoya's own life demonstrates its message: people of all backgrounds can come together, honor the earth, and care for each other. His example continues to influence those focused on uniting traditional wisdom with modern faith for practical community healing. Vinson Brown was born on December 7, 1912 in Reno, Nevada, the son of Dr. Henry A. Brown and Bertha Bender Brown. His father served as a physician near a Native American reservation, sparking Vinson's early interest in indigenous cultures. He later inherited from his father a pipe bag believed to have belonged to Lakota leader Crazy Horse. Brown grew up with a strong affinity for the natural world and adventure. As a teen he sailed to Asia on a freighter and almost perished in a typhoon, but he remained undaunted in his pursuit of nature. In his early 20s he collected plants, insects, and reptiles in Panama and Costa Rica. Guided by a Gwaimi, Ngabi, Indian youth named Chio, one morning he witnessed Chio singing at a jungle waterfall. This encounter convinced Brown of a spiritual reality. All my doubts about the spiritual truth of the existence of God disappeared, he later wrote. Brown attended the University of California, Berkeley, and later earned an M.A. in biology from Stanford University, 1947. His academic training in science underpinned a career as a professional naturalist and writer. Some accounts note he also pursued anthropology at Berkeley. After graduate school he served in the U.S. Army during World War II. In 1946, Brown founded Naturegraph Publishers Incorporated in Los Altos, California. He explained the name as nature, for nature, graph, for well written or drawn. Initially, the company produced nature leaflets and maps for school use. After 1950, his wife Barbara joined the venture and they published books. By the 1960s, Naturegraph's focus expanded to include Native American history and culture. The Browns relocated near Healdsburg, California in 1960, and in 1976 moved Naturegraph to a 10,000 square feet printing and publishing facility in Happy Camp, Siskiyou County. Vinson Brown authored or co-authored about 40 books over his career, many through Naturegraph, on topics ranging from field biology to Native American culture. Among his popular titles were the Amateur Naturalist's Handbook and various guides to wildlife, plants, and geology. He also edited works by other authors, for example, on California wildlife and basketry, under Naturegraph's imprint. Throughout, he used his editorial role to merge science with respect for traditional cultures. Brown built his career on environmental education. In 1936, he founded the Boy Naturalist Club in California, leading children on nature walks and teaching them natural history. His books aimed to make the outdoors your classroom. He often spoke of the urgent need to protect nature. For example, one of his nature books urged young readers that an explorer naturalist may be one of the heroes who helps save the world from destruction by pollution and waste. In his later years, Brown warned that humanity had no future for mankind unless we can learn to come into harmony with ourselves and our surroundings. These themes made his work influential among conservation-minded readers. Brown also wrote for local media. In the 1960s, he was a wildlife columnist, exploring Sonoma County, in the Healdsburg Tribune, sharing nature tips and observations with the community. Beyond books and talks, Brown's activism extended to pressing social issues. As a Bahá'í believer, he joined anti-nuclear efforts. In 1983, he was featured as a co-author of Prevent Doomsday, an anthology of anti-nuclear essays, contributing 4 essays, and the introduction, that critiqued nuclear strategy and advocated disarmament. This effort reflected his view that spiritual values must guide our care for the planet. Brown had a lifelong appreciation for Native American cultures. He visited many indigenous communities across North and Central America during his travels. In the early 1940s, he lived in California as a young naturalist and took interest in local tribes. Later, he and Barbara became especially close to a Pomo basketmaker family, the Lone Dogs, in Northern California, publishing books about Pomo arts. In 1974, he authored Voices of Earth and Sky, The Vision Life of the Native Americans, a pioneering survey of indigenous spiritual heroes and prophets. In 1962, he had co-written Warriors of the Rainbow, which compiled Cree and other tribal prophecies about Earth renewal. This work later influenced environmental groups like Greenpeace. Throughout, Brown took care to present native lore respectfully. Accounts describe him as a naturalist and anthropologist, a publisher and author of dozens of books, with a lifelong interest in and appreciation for Native American cultures and beliefs. Originally raised without religion, Brown's experiences led him to faith. As a youth, he wanted proof of God's existence, but after the waterfall experience, he began to see the spiritual in nature. In the early 1940s, he met Marian Holly, a notable Bahá'í, and after a year of inquiry, he joined the Bahá'í faith in 1945. Thereafter, he became active in the Bahá'í community. He gave hundreds of lectures on Bahá'í teachings across California and the U.S., applying his scientific background to religious questions. In 1984, he and Barbara made the Bahá'í pilgrimage to the holy sites in Israel, describing the journey as the trip of his life. Brown's faith informed his outreach. Notably, in 1952, he brought scientific and spiritual help to inmates at the Santa Clara County Prison. Invited to lead an Alcoholics Anonymous session on habit change, he later taught weekly classes on forming new habits. When discussions turned to religion, Brown introduced 17 inmates to the Bahá'í message. They said the Bahá'í approach was so refreshing, one report noted. Brown also corresponded with Bahá'í communities and supported projects for Native American believers. In all these efforts, he combined his interest in science, culture, and faith as complementary ways of serving others. Barbara Brown continued Naturegraph after Vinson's death in 1991. The company's mission to build a better future in which humans live harmoniously together persists, now run by their son Kevin Brown. Brown's own words remain a part of his legacy. "Science is nothing more or less than the search for truth," he wrote, "and how can such a search be anything but an adventure?" Through his books and talks, Vinson Brown inspired generations to respect nature and embrace unity among peoples. His combined contributions as a biologist naturalist, an author, an advocate for the earth, and a Bahá'í teacher are documented in biographies, archival materials, and his published works. His story is a vivid example of 20th century environmental and intercultural activism grounded in both science and spirituality. The foreword of Warriors of the Rainbow introduces the book's purpose and spirit as a sincere exploration of prophetic dreams and visions among Indigenous peoples. The authors, Willoya and Vinson Brown, affirm that they write only what they deeply believe, with humility before God as the knower. They explain that the book's message is one of universal love and understanding, free from selfishness or pride, and rooted in the spiritual wisdom of the Indian peoples. The foreword contrasts the spiritually inclined reader, who may begin with the visions themselves, and the analytical reader, who might start with the scientific discussion in the appendix. It emphasizes that the dreams collected here, whether from Native Americans, Indians of India, or the East Indian Islands, share a remarkable unity. Rather than revenge or bitterness for past injustices, they prophesy a coming era of brotherhood, peace, and spiritual renewal for all humankind. In The Return of the Spirit, an old Indian woman named Eyes of the Fire teaches her great-grandson Jim the ancient spiritual wisdom of their people. When Jim asks why their ancestors suffered and lost their lands, she explains that this was foreseen by the Old Ones, who said the Indians would go through dark times, forgetting their spirit and chasing material success like the white men, but that one day a great awakening would come. Under her guidance, Jim undergoes traditional training to reconnect with the spirit of life, learning courage, prayer, and harmony with nature and animals. Finally, Eyes of the Fire tells him that a new light will come from the east, uniting all peoples in love and understanding under the symbol of the rainbow. She urges him to become a warrior of the rainbow, one who spreads joy, kindness, and unity to end hate and war in the world. In Dream of the Sioux Pipe Bag, the narrator recounts a vivid spiritual dream in which he meets a Sioux Indian carrying a sacred pipe bag, symbolizing peace and divine connection. In the dream, he witnesses a great transformation among native peoples and senses a prophetic message of renewal. When he later shares this dream with various Indians, none can interpret it until a young Otomi man from Mexico explains that it reflects the ancient prophecy of Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent. According to the legend, Quetzalcoatl foretold the arrival of white men, first as conquerors symbolized by the eagle's cruel foot, then later as messengers of peace symbolized by the dove's gentle foot, who would help restore the Indians' lost spiritual greatness. The dream thus signifies the coming of a new age of understanding and unity, when people of all races will honor the old Indian wisdom and live again in harmony with the Great Spirit. In Indian prophetic visions, the authors gather a series of sacred prophecies and dreams from indigenous peoples across the Americas and beyond, revealing a shared spiritual theme of renewal and unity. These include the Aztec king Montezuma's vision of foreign invaders and a future rebirth of his people, Chief Plenty Coux's dream foretelling the end of the buffalo and the coming of white men's cattle, and prophecies from India, Java, and the Iroquois, all predicting the eventual return of divine guidance through a new world teacher. Figures like Krishna, Buddha, and Yiganawada each speak of recurring divine messengers who appear when righteousness declines, bringing truth and harmony back to humankind. Together, these visions form a tapestry of hope, foretelling a time when the peoples of the earth will overcome division and materialism, rediscover spiritual brotherhood, and unite under one great light of love and understanding. In A Prophecy of Montezuma, Aztec King, the authors recount how Montezuma, the last great ruler of the Aztecs, foresaw the coming of strange white men from the east who would conquer his people. Troubled by dreams and omens, Montezuma understood that this event was part of a divine plan, signaling the end of his empire and the beginning of a new spiritual cycle. Though the prophecy foretold suffering, it also carried hope, that after a long period of darkness and subjugation, the Indian peoples would one day regain their spiritual strength and dignity. The coming of the white men, symbolizing both destruction and transformation, was thus seen not as an end, but as the beginning of a greater awakening in which the Indians would again rise as teachers of spiritual truth to all humanity. In B Vision of Plenty Coux, Chief of the Crow, a young crow boy named Plenty Coux experiences a powerful prophetic vision during his spiritual quest. Guided by a spirit being, he sees herds of buffalo, symbols of his people's traditional life, disappearing into the earth, replaced by white men's cattle, foretelling the end of the old ways and the coming of white domination. He also witnesses a great storm destroying a forest, leaving only the lodge of the chickadee bird untouched, a symbol of wisdom, adaptability, and the power of learning from others. From this, he learns that the future survival and strength of his people will depend not on physical might but on intelligence, humility, and the ability to listen and adapt. The vision thus prophesies the cultural transformation of the Indians and their eventual renewal through spiritual wisdom rather than war. In See Prophecy of King Jojo Baho, the tale centers on an ancient Javanese king and prophet who foretold a future age when materialism, greed, and war would corrupt humanity, leading to great suffering across the world. Yet, he prophesied that this dark era would be followed by the rise of a new world teacher, a divine messenger bringing wisdom, love, and unity to all peoples. This teacher, known as the World Uniter, would come from the West and guide humanity back to harmony with God and nature. Jojo Baho's prophecy mirrors those of other spiritual traditions, predicting that after humanity's decline into selfishness, a new light would emerge to heal divisions of race and religion, leading to a renewed world founded on peace and understanding. In Deep Prophecies of Krishna and Buddha, the authors explain how both great Indian prophets foretold the recurring return of divine truth through new messengers whenever humanity strays from righteousness. Krishna, in the Bhagavad Gita, promises that whenever goodness declines and evil rises, God will manifest again to restore justice and guide humanity. This idea, the text explains, was fulfilled through later prophets such as Buddha, Jesus, and Muhammad, each embodying the same divine spirit in different ages. Buddhist prophecies also speak of Maitreya, the World Uniter, whose coming would usher in an age of peace and enlightenment. Together, these prophecies teach that God's message is universal and continuous, revealing itself anew through holy teachers who renew the world's moral and spiritual life. In Vision of Deganawida, prophet of the Iroquois, the authors tell of Deganawida, a wise Huron prophet who brought a message of peace and unity to the warring Iroquois tribes long before Europeans arrived. With the help of his disciple Hiawatha, he established the Iroquois Confederacy, symbolized by a great tree whose roots spread in all directions, representing the brotherhood of all peoples. Deganawida foresaw future times of suffering for the Indians under white domination but also a later renewal, when a great light would come from the east, reviving the old spirit and uniting humanity in love and understanding. His vision of the white, red, and black serpents symbolized the world's material conflicts, but he promised that when the light returned, the Indians, purified and spiritually awakened, would help lead all races toward true world brotherhood under one divine spirit. In Visions of the Blackfeet and of an Assiniboine, the authors describe prophetic dreams from two northern tribes that, like other indigenous revelations, foresee both hardship and ultimate renewal. The Blackfeet vision tells of a time when their people would suffer under the domination of outsiders and lose touch with their ancient spirit, yet a new light from the east would one day awaken them and restore harmony among all races. Similarly, the Assiniboine prophecy envisions a future when greed and war would spread across the world, but after great trials, humanity would rediscover its spiritual unity. Both prophecies emphasize that true strength comes not from weapons or wealth but from wisdom, humility, and love, and they foretell that the native peoples, once renewed in spirit, will help guide all nations toward peace and understanding. In G. Hopi Prophetic Visions, the Hopi elders recount ancient prophecies foretelling that their people, the peaceful ones, would endure hardship and loss of land when strangers from the east, white men, arrived. Yet they were commanded by the Great Spirit, Masaw, to hold fast to their land, faith, and non-violence, for their steadfastness would one day make them a spiritual center for the world's renewal. The Hopis were told that a true white brother would eventually come from the east, wearing red garments and carrying sacred stone tablets matching their own, bringing with him two powerful helpers who would shake the earth in preparation for a great purification of the world. When the true white brother and his helpers unite with the Hopi, a new era of peace, harmony, and righteousness will begin, where the purified and the pure-hearted will help remake the world in accordance with divine truth. In H. The Great Dream of Black Elk, the famous Oglala Sioux holy man receives a vast prophetic vision revealing both the downfall and future renewal of his people. In his dream, Black Elk sees the Sioux suffering through darkness, war, and division as they lose their spiritual path, symbolized by the breaking of the sacred hoop of his nation. Yet he is shown that after this time of despair, a red-painted sacred man will appear, transforming a spear into a flowering herb, signifying the return of spiritual life and healing. Black Elk witnesses a rainbow in the east and a great flowering tree at the center of the world, under which all races and creatures live together in harmony. His vision foretells a time when humanity will rediscover divine unity, when all religions will join as one, and when the warriors of the rainbow will rise to spread peace and enlightenment across the earth. In I Wovoka and the Ghost Dance, the authors recount the story of Wovoka, a Paiute prophet from Nevada who, in the late 19th century, experienced a powerful vision during a solar eclipse. In it, he saw God and the spirits of the dead, who told him that the world would be renewed, the earth healed, and the Indian peoples restored to harmony if they lived righteously, worked hard, loved one another, and performed a sacred ritual dance, the Ghost Dance. Wovoka's message spread rapidly among many tribes, inspiring hope for unity and peace after years of suffering under white oppression. Though the U.S. authorities misunderstood the movement and violently suppressed it, culminating in the Wounded Knee Massacre, the ghost dance became a profound symbol of faith and spiritual renewal. It prophesied that one day all races would be united in love and understanding under one divine truth, echoing the recurring theme of the coming age of brotherhood and the warriors of the rainbow who would bring peace to the world. In An Eskimo in Search of God, co-author William Willoya shares his personal spiritual journey from his childhood in Nome, Alaska, through years of questioning and discovery. Raised with the traditional wisdom and love of his Eskimo grandmother, he later struggled to reconcile those teachings with the fragmented religions brought by white missionaries. As an adult, he encounters a new world faith that emphasizes unity, love, and understanding among all peoples and religions, a fulfillment of the prophecies he had heard as a child about a divine messenger coming from the East. Through this revelation, Willoya realizes that the indigenous peoples, once dismissed as primitive, have a vital role in healing the world's divisions by reviving their spiritual connection to nature and the Creator. His testimony reflects the book's central message, that the ancient wisdom of the native peoples will help lead humanity toward a new age of global peace, brotherhood, and spiritual awakening. In The Task of the Warriors of the Rainbow, the authors call upon indigenous peoples, and all humanity, to awaken to their spiritual destiny and help heal a world corrupted by greed, war, and separation. They describe the warriors of the rainbow as those who, like the pure-hearted Indians of old, will rise with love, joy, and understanding to unite all races and religions under the Great Spirit's guidance. These warriors will rebuild harmony between humans and nature, restore compassion and justice, and transform societies through service, humility, and wisdom rather than power or politics. They will teach by example, working joyfully, protecting the weak, caring for the earth, and reviving the old virtues of respect and community. The chapter ends with a vision of hope, that through these spiritual warriors, hatred will give way to understanding, the world will be renewed in beauty, and humanity will finally live as one family beneath the rainbow of divine unity. In Appendix A, William Willoya, by Vinson Brown, co-author Vinson Brown offers a personal portrait of William Willoya, describing him as a tall, strong, and deeply spiritual Eskimo whose life embodies the message of the book. Brown admires Willoya's physical toughness, hardened by life as a hunter and fisherman in Alaska, but even more his inner strength, humility, and faith. He portrays Willoya as a man transformed by spiritual discovery, who bridges the worlds of traditional Eskimo wisdom and modern faith, using both to promote unity and understanding among all peoples. Through Willoya's example, Brown emphasizes the living reality of the warriors of the rainbow, individuals who blend courage, compassion, and service to the Great Spirit in order to bring healing and brotherhood to a divided world. In The Peyote Religion, the authors explain the origins and meaning of the Native American peyote faith, describing it as a sincere and disciplined spiritual movement centered on communion with the Great Spirit through the sacred peyote cactus. They emphasize that, contrary to common misunderstanding, the religion is not about intoxication but about purification, prayer, and moral strength. Followers gather in reverent ceremonies that combine Christian and indigenous elements, seeking visions, healing, and deeper connection with God. The peyote religion, they note, has helped many Indians recover spiritual purpose, sobriety, and self-respect amid the disintegration brought by modern life. The authors interpret it as one of the many signs of a great indigenous spiritual revival, part of the awakening of the warriors of the rainbow, who will lead humanity toward renewed faith and unity with the Creator. In The Prophecy of Proudhon, the authors discuss the 19th-century French philosopher Pierre-Joseph Proudhon, who, though not a traditional prophet, foresaw the collapse of selfish material civilization and the rise of a new, spiritually unified world. Proudhon predicted that the age of greed, nationalism, and exploitation would eventually give way to one founded on justice, cooperation, and the brotherhood of humanity. His vision parallels the indigenous prophecies throughout Warriors of the Rainbow, foretelling a global transformation in which people will abandon competition and domination to live by love and mutual respect. The authors present Proudhon's insight as another reflection of the same divine truth seen in prophetic dreams worldwide, that a new spiritual era is dawning, when all peoples will unite as one family under the Great Spirit. In Science and Prophetic Dreams, the authors explore how prophetic dreams, long respected in indigenous and spiritual traditions, can be understood through a scientific lens. They argue that many of history's great events and revelations were preceded by visionary dreams, which serve as channels for divine or higher knowledge. Citing psychologists, historians, and religious thinkers, they suggest that such dreams reveal universal patterns of human intuition that transcend time and culture. True prophetic dreams, they explain, are not mere imagination but expressions of the subconscious mind illuminated by spiritual reality, often anticipating great changes in human civilization. The section concludes that science and spirituality need not oppose each other. When united, they show that prophecy is part of humanity's evolving consciousness, guiding people toward a new age of enlightenment and unity foretold by the warriors of the rainbow. In Understanding the Symbology of Prophetic Dreams, the authors explain how prophetic dreams use symbols to reveal divine truths about humanity's spiritual evolution. They distinguish between true and false messiahs, arguing that genuine prophets, like Krishna, Buddha, Moses, Jesus, and Muhammad, transform civilization through teachings of love and cooperation, while false ones fail to bring lasting good. They note that throughout history, people have often misunderstood prophecies by expecting literal fulfillments, such as the physical return of a Messiah, rather than recognizing the symbolic return of the same divine spirit in new forms. The chapter teaches that dreams and prophecies must be read with spiritual insight, not material expectation, because God's message is universal and continuous. When interpreted correctly, these dreams point to humanity's destiny, the awakening of global unity, love, and peace, fulfilling the ancient vision of the warriors of the rainbow. In How Prophetic Dreams Fit into Patterns, the authors explain that prophetic dreams across different cultures and eras follow recognizable spiritual patterns that mirror humanity's moral and social development. They argue that these dreams often arise during times of crisis or change, preparing people for great transitions, especially the coming of divine messengers who renew civilization. By comparing prophecies from indigenous peoples, Eastern religions, and Western traditions, the authors show that all point toward the same ultimate purpose, the unification of humanity under one God and one moral law of love. They suggest that understanding these recurring patterns helps reveal how divine guidance operates through history, using dreams and visions as instruments for collective awakening. Thus, prophetic dreams form part of a vast, interconnected plan leading to the fulfillment of the warriors of the rainbow prophecy, a new age of enlightenment, peace, and spiritual unity for all humankind. In the acknowledgement section of Warriors of the Rainbow, the authors express heartfelt gratitude to the many individuals and communities who made the book possible. They thank Indigenous elders, storytellers, and spiritual teachers from various tribes for sharing their sacred visions and prophecies with openness and trust. Special appreciation is given to artists, editors, and publishers who helped bring the stories to life with authenticity and respect. The authors also acknowledge the guidance of the Great Spirit, whose inspiration they believe unites all faiths and peoples in the book's message. Ultimately, the acknowledgements reflect the spirit of cooperation and humility that defines the work itself, a collective offering of love, wisdom, and hope dedicated to the awakening of the warriors of the rainbow and the coming era of world unity and peace.